Apple's iPhone 6 and 6 Plus are finally here.
But should you buy one?
Welcome to Vertical Hold, the tech show where we channel surf through the headlines in search of the big picture. I'm Adam Turner, and I'm here with a man who's only available in one size, Alex Kidman. Alex, what's new in tech?
Samsung's announced the pricing for its upcoming range of Galaxy Note handsets, as well as the Gear VR headset that works with the Galaxy Note 4. The baseline Galaxy Note 4 will cost you $949 when it goes on sale towards the end of October, while the snazzier Galaxy Note Edge will cost $1,249 in early November. The Gear VR headset, meanwhile, will cost you an additional $249.
There's also movement from the Microsoft camp, with Nokia announcing the new mid-range Lumia 735. It also sports a 4.7-inch screen, plus there's a 5-megapixel front camera for selfies and wireless charging for sitting on the bedside table.
Vodafone's announced new mobile deals, with the primary new hook being free international calls to 10 countries if you recharge $50 or more at a time. There's also increased data caps and bonus data if you choose to recharge online. It'll be interesting to see, with the growth of prepaid and Australians buying mobiles outright, if Telstra and Optus follow suit.
Both Telstra and Optus are expanding their LTE advanced networks, offering up to 150 megabit per second download speeds to compatible devices such as the iPhone 6. Both telcos are also extending their 700 MHz coverage, which offers wider regional coverage as well as better indoor reception.
The iPhone 6 and 6 Plus are here. We've both had a bit of time to play with the 6, and I've had a bit of time to play with the 6 Plus. So, what do we reckon? What are the good bits for the 6 and 6 Plus?
Well, I think the screen is really one of the good bits. I mean, obviously the size, but it's the screen that makes the difference. I thought the screen on the iPhone 5 was impressive. I really did. I put the 6 next to it. It's brighter, it's got better viewing angles, the color accuracy is maybe improved a little bit, and you're suddenly looking at the screen on the iPhone 5 going, how did I think this was so good? It really is one of the best smartphone screens around, and I think that is part of the thing that will take your breath away when you first pick up this phone. Obviously, there's also
it's definitely a premium screen across both devices. In fact, having played a bit with the 6 Plus, the 6 Plus screen is even more striking, and I mean that's especially apparent when you use material that takes advantage of all that extra screen real estate. Video is the obvious example. Video is really quite nice, almost to the point where it kind of pushes up towards an iPad mini kind of thing.
Well, that's the thing, is who's going to buy these things, because the 4.7-inch feels pretty comfortable in your hand. You get used to that pretty quickly if you've been using a 4-inch. But a 5.5-inch is a big jump, and you have to start thinking, am I basically buying a small mini here? And is it the kind of thing that you buy because you don't want a phone and a mini and you only want one device? I think there might be a lot of people who rush out and buy the 6 Plus and then get it out of the box and go, oh, that's actually a bit bigger than I anticipated.
It's a seriously large phone. I mean, I've size compared it with everything going out there, and it is, it's the biggest premium phone you can buy right now. It's interesting, really, because Apple's positioned it in such a way that it's got just a couple of features on the 6. The camera is slightly better. Obviously, you've got more screen real estate. Obviously, the battery lasts a bit longer, frankly, because there's an awful lot more space to throw battery in there. And those are good headline features. But you've got to kind of weigh that against the fact that it is a physically large device. I mean, especially for anyone coming up from an iOS background, but even if you're coming across from most Android phones, excluding, say, the Note, which is the obvious, leader in that field. I mean, this is somewhere where Apple is not invented the large screen phone. They're very much following.
They actually mocked people who had large screen phones. Let's be clear about that. That this was the phone that Apple said you didn't need and was a ridiculous phone. Just like the 7-inch tablet was the tablet that you didn't need, until they finally caved in and said, actually, yeah, you're right, people do want them. So Apple has kind of had to concede here that maybe bigger is better.
Well, bigger up to a point. What I've really found, because I've switched over to the 6 Plus as much as is feasible, just to kind of get a feel for how does that larger size affect me.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting one, because the more I use it, and then the more I use the 6 on the side, the more I start to think, actually, the 6 is the real main market phone, and the 6 Plus is the niche.
Yeah.
And the differences between that two, battery life aside perhaps, and that really depends on your usage, are not so great. The camera is better on the 6 Plus, but it's still perfectly possible to take a lousy photo with really good camera equipment.
Is it just the
either
optical
side.
image stabilization, or are there other things that look better about the photos? Has it got a different sensor, or do the photos look sharper? Or
The sensor is, to the best of my knowledge, identical.
Yeah.
I've noticed slightly better dim light performance, but maybe a little bit marginal there.
Yeah.
It is one of those things where, and actually the other thing that really surprised me, for those who love benchmarks, and I'm not one of those entirely, because they're one of those things where people get into number pissing contests, to be honest. But having said that, the 6 outranks the 6 Plus. I don't know if that's just a function of the benchmarks that I'm using detailing slightly more memory capacity in the 6 Plus, or the fact that running that larger screen means it's just got to use more memory to, of course, fill all that screen
space. That would be my
space.
first guess, that it needs more grunt to drive all those extra pixels, so there's less grunt left over for everything else. But this new A8 chip, which is an extension of the 64-bit architecture that we saw introduced with the last phone, is no slouch. So even if you're giving up a bit on the 6 Plus to drive the extra pixels, you're not going to end up with a sluggish phone.
Oh, heck no.
No.
And I mean, actually, the reality there as well is, with that and with their underlying metal architecture for games and things like that, we've really only kind of started to scratch the surface of what these devices are capable of. It's interesting running existing apps on them, especially on the 6 Plus, because you do end up with some odd scaling issues. At first I thought it would be very similar to when the first generation iPad came out.
And you had your black bars at the top and the bottom. Yeah.
You had your black bars in the top and the bottom, or you had the option to double the screen size to, to blow the pixels up to really nice, big and square. Well, you don't have that doubling option. It just does whatever it's going to do depending on how the app's been optimized. Some apps look great and the extra screen real estate is fine. Others are a bit weird and a bit wonky. And again, that's something that can and hopefully will be fixed as we go kind of downstream from here with app updates. It's really a matter of devs getting out there and getting their apps recoded for these screen sizes and then reapproved by Apple, although my understanding is there's a huge backlog of those right at the moment, because of course they kept all of this quite secret.
They're falling into the Android fragmentation trap. That's always been Apple's strength and weakness, is it's one size fits all, which is annoying if you want a different size, but great if you're developing for it, because it all fits. Now they've got even more screen sizes and more screen resolutions than ever before, so developers have to allow for all of that. So you are seeing a bit of fragmentation, but you've still got the underlying architecture.
It's nowhere near as bad as Android.
Nowhere near as bad as
Android.
Android.
You've got hundreds of screen sizes, and then variants that never get particular Android version upgrades.
Exactly, and then different architecture
weird
underneath,
things
so
with
an app
Bluetooth
that runs
and
on
Wi-Fi,
one
all
doesn't
sorts
run
of
on
things.
the other.
It can be a lot more painful, and I suspect this is a problem which will largely resolve itself, because we're still only talking very early days and a small number of models. But yes, your point is not inaccurate. There is a bit of fragmentation happening at the moment.
And I think that's one of the reasons why Apple is held back, and it's always been iWay or the highway. There's one size, and if you don't like that, then you're holding it wrong. Is because they knew it kept things simpler by keeping it a one-size-fits-all ecosystem, and they've been forced out of that in the last couple of years because the competition has come up with form factors that actually work for people and people like, and they'd say, yeah, right, I think we will concede that maybe there is room for a 7-inch tablet or a 5-inch phone.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the killer question, of course, is, would you buy one? And if you bought one, which one?
I'd buy the 6 tomorrow. The only reason why I haven't bought the 6 already is because I'm still on my contract. And I even rang up Telstra to find out how much I've got left on my contract. I would definitely buy the 6. I don't think I would go the 6 Plus. I think it's a bit too much. I don't think I need that. My partner is weighing up on whether she wants to go with the 6 or the 6 Plus because she doesn't have an iPad of her own. She's the only person in the house really who has to borrow someone else's iPad. So she's weighing up whether having a 6 Plus negates the need to have her own iPad because she's now got something that sits in the middle. But then does it pass the pocket test? Does it pass the purse test? Does it pass the how often do I need 2 hands to use it test? And they're all the kind of things. I think you'd be mad to buy a 6 Plus sight unseen.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. You need some hands-on time. And the answer to that is that by and large, unless you've got very big pockets, it doesn't pass that.
Yeah.
It is primarily a two-handed device. They've got this whole setup where if you do a double touch rather than a tap on the home button, it brings the top half of the screen down. And look, it kind of works, but it's codgy because you end up having to select something and then the screen goes back up and you double tap again to select something else.
Yeah.
And it needs a bit of a refinement. I can see what Apple's tried to do here, and kudos to them for trying it, but it doesn't always entirely work. And I think I'm with you. I would buy a 6 tomorrow, funds permitting, but the 6 Plus, I think, is the niche play. There's some appeal there, and clearly the success of the Note and similar large form factor phones has shown there's a market there, and they may even grab some of the Android people who said, well, look, I like iOS, but those screen sizes are just too small for me.
Definitely,
but
some people
I'm not one of those people. I think the 6 is actually, even though in some ways it's a lower spec device, I think the 6 is the better of the two phones overall.
Yeah, I would be, like I said, I'd be really reluctant to recommend the 6 Plus to anyone without some hands-on time. And if you are not sure either way, I'd err on the side of caution and go for the 6. If you're comfortable with holding the 5, you are not going to really notice the move to the 6 because it's thinner and lighter. It's got a curved edge, so it sits nicely in your hand. Unless you have dainty hands.
It is a little slippery.
A little bit. But
unless you have dainty would still be a good idea.
Yeah. Unless you have dainty hands and you're already fumbling a little bit with the iPhone 5, you're not going to pick up the iPhone 6 and say, it's a monster, I can't hold this thing. They have made a few little concessions, like they've moved the power button from the top to the side, exactly where it is on the Android phones, because it's easier to reach than to reach the top. But you pick up the 6 and the strengths of it, the screen, the size, everything will outweigh the fact that it's now 8.4 millimeters wider. Going from the 5 to the 6 Plus is a much bigger jump. And as you say, some people might come back because they've gone to Android because they just can't live with a 4-inch screen. Those people might be tempted to come back to iOS, but I definitely wouldn't go that large. But it's the kind of thing that grows on you as well.
The other advantage you've got at the moment, of course, is that Apple's in a kind of somewhat sitting pretty position. They've sold an awful lot of iPhones in their initial period. From my experience of looking at the Sydney launch queue, about half of them appeared to be heading immediately overseas for resale in markets they haven't launched in, but that means there's a bit of a shortage of them. That means that if you are considering it, you've actually got a slight advantage if you can find an Apple store or a telco that's got one. Go in, have a bit of a play with it, because the reality is you're not going to get hold of one particularly quickly. You can take your time and think about it.
Yeah.
And especially actually with the large screen. The Note 4 is, of course, due for imminent release, and that's another option that you've got. The iPhone still remains an option in the vast sea of smartphones that are out there. Android, Windows Phone 8. There are even new BlackBerries coming. It's an interesting time for smartphones generally, and Apple, I think, has launched a really nice premium design here, undeniably at a premium price.
Oh, yeah.
But they shouldn't be your only consideration. They should be a choice amongst many.
Yeah. I've noticed in the past playing with the Note 3, which I think is about 5.5 inches, so roughly the same size as the 6 Plus, that it does grow on you. You take it out of the box and think, oh my God, what have I done? But after a day or two, it does grow on you. So while I would definitely say don't buy the 6 Plus,
so it becomes a 6-inch phone or a 7-inch phone. It just expands.
But while I would definitely say don't buy the 6 Plus sight unseen, don't think that it can't grow on you. If you spent time with it, you might eventually concede that, yes, this
totally.
I can't go back.
I've done the same with the Note myself, and you can totally acclimatise to that size and form factor, but I am a noted fan of smaller, more powerful phones. My one big regret, and hopefully Apple might even pick up on this, is that in fact there aren't 3 models this year. I would totally still go an iPhone 6S, the 5S with the 6 internals.
Oh, no,
but maybe that's just
I'd
me.
definitely go up to the 6. That extra, almost the extra inch definitely makes a difference, I reckon. And that about wraps it up for another episode of Vertical Hold'em. I think I'm off to the shops to get in the queue for the iPhone 7.
Oh, can you grab me one while you're there, mate?
Yeah, sure.